Python coders. So I hope you're all doing really, really well. This is more of a rant and rave video because, I spend a lot of my time doing research for videos and just general learning. I do like to spend some time on YouTube looking up what other people are doing and how they're coding things and how their environments are set up. And I was watching I was watching this guy who's fairly young. I mean, I'm in my mid 40s and I've been coding now for about 22 years. And I haven't been a full-time coder, but as part of my job, I've been doing coding. And I just laugh because there's some things that younger people coming out of college, some of the ideas that they have, I don't know where these come from. And I was just thinking back when he was talking about some of his college experiences, and I was looking at some of my college experiences. And one of the things that pops up from time to time from these guys is the use of a IDE. And I'm not exactly sure why, but some of them are very vehemently against people using IDEs. Just for an example, I wrote my first program. And when I say wrote, I mean I copied it out of a manual when I was 6. My brother had what is called the Intellivision video game console from Mattel, and my grandparents bought me the computer module that went with it several years later. And I remember copying this program out of the book. So this was the first thing that I actually typed in and ran. This was a program that would grab one of the sprites from inside of the video game cartridge, and it would move it horizontally across the screen, and it would change colors, and it would play musical notes. And it took a long time because I mean I'm 6, so it's not like I got a lot of typing skill, and the keyboard for that thing was completely, totally terrible. So I'm sitting there trying to type this thing in. It took me a few tries to get this thing in, but I got it. And you can't imagine the amazement when you do something like that and it works and it does what it says it's supposed to do. I loved it. I just got the biggest bang out of it. But there's no IDE. I mean, the only thing that came up on the screen was a blank slate, and you just type this stuff in, and there's no syntax checking, no nothing. I just laugh because when I code in something like PyCharm or even Visual Studio Code, it really doesn't matter, but a modern IDE, whether it's Eclipse, I've got some tools I use that are Eclipse based, and all of the things that we just seem to take for granted, but are really quite useful. I mean, the reason that people build IDEs is to make your life easier. I can't imagine somebody coming out of college, no less, who is like half my age. Well, I really, I don't really think you should be using an IDE if you're a beginner. And I'm thinking, my thought process is, listen, it doesn't matter what language you're going to code in, but let's say Python. You're learning Python in college, or you've got a project that you want to do in Python. Why would you not want to do that inside of an IDE? I don't get it. In my college experience, when I first hit college in 1997, I started to learn how to code on a very large multi-user computer system. It was a terminal-based system, and we were sitting there using an IDE of sorts, but there was no modern convenience like syntax highlighting. You know, the things we take for granted, like if I take this out of here and I just have it in here, you'll see that it gives me a highlighted message right away that says that, hey, you've got a problem. And back when I started, we also were blocked from using the system's built-in debugger. That still blows my mind. So you can imagine a bunch of students, and I went to a community college, so not everybody that went to college with me was younger. Some of them were older people that, and I say older, I really shouldn't, because some of them were my age. And what they were doing was they were career transitioning. Something had happened with what they were doing, and they decided to change careers. Good for them. I mean, if that's what they wanted to do. But they're trying to learn C, and we're sitting there using a terminal-based system, and we're trying to do all this. There's no syntax highlighting. The only time that you know that you've got a problem is when you put things in the compiler and you try to compile C. One lady I'll never forget, she was really funny. She used to call it the corn pile, throw it in the corn pile. And I just think back to those days and I laugh because it's like, man, that was brutal. It was really hard. And then not having access to a debugger made it even worse because there was no way to debug. The only way that you could figure out if, well, we used to do a lot of print statements to see what was going on. And I look back at that now and I laugh because I can't imagine not having a debugger. Now, my Java classes after that were a little bit different. We were doing those on personal computers, not the big multi-user system. And the difference was one of my classmates, great guy by the name of Mark, he actually put us onto this program called TextPad, which is still available. I was really surprised. In fact, I looked today and they just released 9.0.1 on the 22nd of January. So this takes me back because this is what we used to actually code our Java programs. Yeah, there we go. Oh, there's the C++ program. And it was a lot more simplistic back then than it is today. It's an equivalent to Notepad++. I'm sure you've probably run into that into your travels. This is sort of the equivalent, just has a longer history, much longer history. So that would have been around 1998. And this was night and day. I mean, compared to using a terminal-based system. And then, after I moved out of state, I was still working with the very large multi-user system. And in my first full-time job out of college, there was a gentleman that I met, very advanced developer for his time. His name was Ed. Incredibly intelligent man. I actually learned a lot from him. And I noticed he was using an IDE, a graphical IDE like TextPad. And I said, Ed, what is that? And he said, well, that's Code 400. And it's no longer available. We have transitioned to Eclipse-based tools, but I actually am able to run this inside of a virtual machine of Windows XP. And this brings back a lot of memories. I just set this up again last week. and I was looking at it because this was my first full-time IDE. It had real-time syntax checking. It did not have autocomplete that we're used to today, and the modern tools have autocomplete, but this particular one didn't. But it was just a blast being able to sit there and work in a IDE instead of having to use the terminal-based tools, which quite frankly were awful. So thanks, Ed. That really made a difference. So I've been using IDEs full time since 2000. Another thing that I really laughed, this kid was talking about how in some of his classes, he's actually sitting there, or when he was in college, they did paper tests for their tests. And I'm like, we didn't even do that. All the way back in 1998, when I was doing my Java classes, we would use TextPad. Like I was showing you, we would write the programs out, and then we would save them on a floppy disk and give them to our instructor. And I was sitting there like, you're actually having to write on a paper test? Now, we did have paper tests, but it was more general knowledge than it was writing a practical program. If we were going to sit there and write a program, then what we would do is we'd type it all out in TextPad, run it, and then we could copy it to a floppy disk and give it to our instructor. So I was fascinated how he was talking about having to actually write code on paper. I don't think I have written code on paper forever. Not even flowcharting, which sometimes I will sit and write a flowchart to somewhat get my ducks in a row. If I'm writing something that's, a big GUI-based system and I need to kind of get the general flow, I will do some simple flowcharting for myself, but it's more organization for myself. We would sit and do our tests right in the IDE. But it was fascinating to me to tell somebody who's new in 2021, 2022, anything past the year 2000, why would you not want to learn the IDE? I thought it was so funny. Like, for instance, this is a function in PySide that I'm going to do for a button. And some of this stuff is so beautiful. Like, you'll see that I've got all of this pops up right here with the autocomplete. And like, if I'm going to choose my button, I usually consistently name my push buttons with a prefix push button. So now I know I can just pick push button close, dot, and then it brings up a whole list of functions. And what I want is clicked, and then dot connect, and then what am I going to connect to? And this is going to be self.close. I just can't imagine not having that at my disposal. Why would you want to make things harder for somebody who's new into coding? Think of it this way. If you want to give Notepad++ to a programmer, all right, they're in college, they're learning C++, C#, Java, all that stuff. If you give them something like Notepad++ to start out with, all right, think of other professions. Think if you were a machinist. I have done some machining work in my past. It's something I really love to do. And I'm friends with a couple of machinists, and one of them has been retired now for a while. But if you think of all of the tools that a machinist uses in their daily job, and I don't just mean the highly advanced computer controlled stuff. I mean the stuff that lathes, milling machines, all of the calibration tools, all the measuring tools. There's a ton of different tools available to a machinist to help them get their job done. Can you imagine if you told a machinist, well, guess what? You're just starting out, so your first tool is a hammer. That's it. That's all you get. You get a hammer. Probably hit himself in the head first. My dad was a welder for many, many, many years. Lots of different tools. Electricians, lots of tools. My brother is a building maintenance supervisor for a property management company. He's got quite a few people that work for him. I can't imagine going up to somebody like that and saying, well, guess what? Screwdriver, that's what you get today. Here you go. That's not going to work. So as a developer, if you're just starting out in this and you hear somebody say to you, here's your Notepad++, here's your Sublime Text, or here's your whatever the heck it is, throw it over your left shoulder and go out there on YouTube and see what people are actually doing. There's some pretty talented people on YouTube. Not everybody's an expert. I'm not the world's foremost expert in everything programming, but I know enough that when somebody tells me that I need to stick to one tool and it has to have almost no functionality, I'm probably going to look and see what other people are doing. When I started in this, we didn't have YouTube. We had mailing lists. We had news groups. We had IRC chat. I spent a lot of time in IRC chat from time to time, asking other people what are they doing. So go on YouTube, take a look what other people are doing, make sure that you evaluate what IDE you want for the job. You know, a popular option today has become Visual Studio Code, and it always opens on the other monitor. Ugh, I hate that. Anyway, this is an excellent tool set too. And I have to admit, I don't do much with it. I don't do a lot of Python development with it because I use PyCharm, but there's nothing wrong with this tool. And you can go on YouTube today and see 1,000 different tutorial videos on how to use this tool. And I don't recommend you just watch one. Watch a whole bunch of them. You know, see what other people are doing and then find your own style. When I'm coding in PyCharm and I'm coding with PySide or Qt for Python, I'm doing a lot that maybe people wouldn't do. It's not their working style, it's my working style. So I'm doing things the way that I want to do them for many different reasons. So you always want to go out there and see what are people doing, what's the tools that they're using, why do they pick those tools? And here's the other thing. Once you get started with a tool, don't let your education of that tool or that language end right there. This is a field that is constantly changing. Python, they are constantly adding features to the language. PySide, PyQt, they're always adding things to those. This isn't static. It's not like, I laugh when people graduate from college and now they're out in the working world. It's like, well, guess what? You've got your master's degree, bachelor's degree, associate's degree, whatever you got, and you're out there working. Now you will be surprised in the first year of working, you will most likely learn more than you will in years and years of college. That's what happened to me. When I started working out in the working world, I was surprised at how much I had to absorb. And I had an apartment that was fairly close to where I was working at the time. So on Saturdays, I'm completely bored in the apartment. So I would go into the office and I would sit and practice with things. I would learn. Reading. Reading is another thing. I cannot tell you how many books in the last 20 years that I have read on programming, networking, tons of other topics. And that continues to this day. I'm always picking up something to read. I'm always reading articles. It's very important for you to carve out time to do that and stay up to date. Now, these days you don't come across developers that are focused on one language as much as people are focusing on several different languages. I know several different languages. I don't code in several different languages every single day, but I can. I can switch back and forth if I have to. But it's very important to stay up to date. And I've had people tell me in the past, they're like, well, I just don't have time to do that. Well, hopefully your doctor or your next surgeon doesn't do the same thing, because you kind of need to carve out time to stay up to date. You don't have to turn it into you don't have to become obsessed over it. There's plenty to do in life, and life is not all about sitting and writing code all day long. But if you want to do things with some skill, then you do have to put in some time. And the main rant of this video is use good tools. Don't use inferior tools in 2023 and beyond. There's no reason for that. Would I want to sit and code in TextPad today? Well, actually, maybe that wouldn't be so bad, because it looks like they've actually added a lot to TextPad. But why would I do that when I've got Visual Studio Code? I can code C++ in Visual Studio Code. And also, the people who make PyCharm, which obviously I do like PyCharm. I mean, I use it quite a bit. The people who make PyCharm also make tools for other languages. They make it for Java, for .NET. They make CLion for C and C++. They make RubyMine for Ruby, if you're interested in Ruby. So, again, don't listen to some of these people who are like, well, you need to learn the basics. The IDE is one of the basics. Okay, I'm telling you, this is somebody who's got 22 years of experience doing this. The IDE that you choose is one of your basics. It's not Notepad, okay? That's not going to get you very far. You need to start learning some of these more sophisticated tools. There are excellent books on these tools. There are excellent YouTube tutorials out there. Carve out some time and learn the tools. It's like Qt Designer. This is another tool. If I open up Qt, let's see here. I can open up this login window in Qt Designer. Here's another tool. And this is not an IDE. This is an interface designing tool. There are excellent tutorials out there for this. There's material right from Qt themselves. There's YouTube videos. I don't know if I've actually seen a book specific on Qt Designer, but there might actually be one out there. But again, it's not only just the practice, it's how do I get good at using this tool? Well, usually your starting point is going to be somebody else showing you that, like in a college class. And so watching a YouTube tutorial video can fill in a lot of those gaps. And in any event, I hope I didn't rant and rave too much. This is just a shorter video today. But I really wanted to stress few of these points, and I really hope that you enjoy your coding experience as much as I do. I do enjoy doing this. It can be frustrating at times, of course, but so can anything. But it's a lot of fun. Just remember that it takes some time and commitment. You you're going to have to put in a little bit of work, and you're going to have to do some reading and watching some videos. Sometimes it just doesn't pop right away. But in any event, I hope whatever you're coding is going really well for you. And other than that, happy coding.